book.
Yeah, it was.
I'll get to finish it.
Oh yeah.
Barely.
Dang it. Okay, well, I didn't realize that the whole book had to be read by today, so I'm only about halfway through the book.
It's all right. Do you mind if do you want us to hold back and not, you know?
No, you go for it. Make me want to read it.
You will. It is a page turner. I'm sorry that I know your schedule's hard though, so you'll get to it. And I think other students were having the same problem because she put an update on that and said, you know, just try to get to chapter 7 to where he goes and presents. How far are you?
I'm like to chapter 5.
Okay, so he's kind of.
He was just asked by the Kenya guy to speak.
Oh, Johnson Warwa or something like that?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. Exactly what the name is.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm director this week, right? None of you were planning on that? Okay.
Nope.
So, you've read, how has your understanding and perception of the process of international policy and law changed?
I think for me, I didn't know how much like the UN documents or the policies that they come up with during the conferences influence each country's policies. Like I don't think I realized, yeah, the influence that they had on each country.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my questions up with you too. I'm almost there. Yeah, it was. The whole thing was very interesting to me. I'm still not sure I really understand how these policies affect, you know, people in their huts and whatever around the world. But
Yeah.
I'm sensing that it's pretty significant. And I want to understand it better. So.
At this point, I have not had anything shocking, but it's interesting to see all the systems work together and good to review all the systems. But yeah. Okay. So to you ladies, does the UN seem like more of an individual focus or a family focus, and why?
I'll go first again. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's mostly individual focused for the most part, or at least those people that are advocating for it. Those individuals are very vocal and influential in the way they go about things. But there definitely are people there that are family focused, but I'm just not sure as to how many there are now as there used to be, like when he went. And it's probably still going, but yeah.
I completely agree with Shelby. It seems that way. It seems that there's corruption in there. It seems that there are some really loud voices in there that are in with the chair people, and I can't believe the corruption that he outlined in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, it's frightening, actually. But so to me, it's individual focus. That darkness that you're really getting to about right now, Madison, where he's like in the room preparing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, you know, for a man of his stature and, you know, talking about arguing before the U.S. Supreme Court and how incredible that was. But, you know, that was not only the anxiety, but the darkness both that he felt. So it's kind of alarming, but that field is all individual. It's tearing down any family unit.
And it's surprising how bold those advocates are in like what they actually say to people's faces. They're very bold and rude.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's scary.
Okay, my response to that question, I went with what I've so far that I've read, and then like in the past few weeks that we've kind of been studying with the UN, and I agree with you that it seems to be like the minority groups have a really loud voice, and not a lot of those are family focused. So, the next question was, based on what you've learned so far, how has your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law?
For me, I liked the emphasis that they had on influence. The one lady that he was talking to, I think it was when he was going, um, when they had all the speakers ready. I can't think of the word. He was like number 39 or something like that. I can't think
At
to like give his
the audition.
yeah, the auditions. Thank you. I couldn't think of that word. The lady that he was talking to, and she just kept emphasizing the influence and how a lot of the policy is pushed by influence, and whether that be just money and whatnot. But I don't think I realized how much of it really is pushed by influence. So that was eye opening for me.
That's a good point. I'd forgotten about that. But going along that kind of clipping onto your idea there, there's also a comment in there that when they had met at some of their other summits at other UN meetings, that they had music to help soften people to the spirit of families. It struck me. Did you catch that one little sentence in there? Oh my gosh, it struck me. And how important um, that gentle persuasion is. I think the other thing about international policy and law is the importance of collaborating efforts. And he found brothers, and that's the gem, Madison, at the end of the book. And finding these people from the seed of Abraham, also from Hagar, and realizing it was a very spiritual experience he had at the end in the mosque, and seeing the importance that we have kind of a unified vision, but we're on opposite sides of the country, and how important uniting them can help international policy.
Okay, something that I thought was pretty interesting was I just got past the part where there's a man from India that says they signed the policy and then they go back and ignore it like nothing even happened. And I thought that was really interesting because he's so high up in there and he doesn't even care. And so, what am I trying to say here? Okay, so I talked about how people that are in these positions need to remember who they're fighting for, and the people back home, the laws they pass are serious, and they need to be taken as such. Was bit that I got to. So the next question says, what role did you see the Lord playing in Professor Wilkins' efforts to advocate for the families of the world? And what lessons did you learn for your own efforts?
Sorry, I just finished my notes. I just saw how much he was there to help him with his advocacy efforts. He helps create situations and soften people's hearts enough to get Richard to speak, where he eventually got the ball rolling for everything else. And so his hand was in all of the details of everything. And plus, he was very supported by his family and the community through their faithful fasting and prayer. And he could feel that strength and support, which helped him a lot. And I think for my own efforts, I noticed that Richard was strong and faithful, and he was close to the Spirit. And that's when Heavenly Father was able to speak through Richard and put the words in his mouth of what he needed to say. And so that stood out to me a lot, that should be something I need to focus on and use.
He outlines, yeah, he's a great writer, isn't he? So I really enjoyed the book. The first thing that caught my eye for Heavenly Father's hand in things is he was growing a beard and getting ready to play Tevye at Fiddler on the Roof at some theater in Utah. And so when he goes there, because he was not planning on being a part of this, he just kind of trimmed the beard up. And he's also from the Kennedy Center at BYU. And so his initial one received undue respect because they thought he looked like, and he said, I look like an East Coast academic guy, and they thought I was from the Harvard School of Kennedy Center Studies or something. And it was such a, those little things, it was so guileless. I mean, he had no intent to deceive, but all those little things, even his theater training, you just look, I mean, God just puts those things in our life experience. And I think for us, there's experiences that you too have had and that I've had that he is giving us. So when the time comes that we can have, if there is a platform that we can stand on, or whatever our position is, to help us have a more a voice that's clear and to be able to speak up. Another specific incident that he also said was kind of a turning point. He mentioned that in 1949 that there had been a definition of marriage in an earlier UN meeting, and he got a guy from the United Families to help him find that, because as a law professor, he says that is precedence. So when there's precedence in a court or something, it's helpful to reestablish it. So because that had been defined in 1949, so that woman just blurted it out in anger, and he's kind of new to the whole scene. And he's like, oh, thank you. And so he goes over and he gets an assistant to go in there, and he's overwhelmed when he sees volumes of books and how to find the one that's 1949. And he said the first one he opened to was not only that, but it was a page. So the timing and God's hand is in these things. It was beautiful. There's several other things, but that's it.
Okay, that was the one I was going to mention, was when he, like, the miscommunication of where he went to school and this opportunity. That's what I wrote down.
Was that
But I agree with, it was, yeah. I agree that Lord's hands in our efforts and like our experiences, like you said, a lot this semester, and it's probably just because I'm in this class, but I like taking the time to do the like spiritual stuff and to see how he helps me in classes or literally advocacy efforts is awesome. So okay, these next two questions I don't have answers for because I have not finished the book. So here we go. Even though the book was largely about Richard Wilkins' experience, what important supporting roles did you see others playing in this account? And why is it important to recognize this?
Okay, so one of the ones that I kind of mentioned before was his wife and family and their community were big supporters for him. And I loved that they kept talking about his wife and showing the conversations he had with her. And I thought that was just so sweet. And she was such a strength to him. And she helped him get through the hard times. And she was also close to the Spirit, which allowed her to help give him ideas that he needed in his advocacy efforts. So she was able to help him even though she was across the world in another country. And a lot of other people encouraged and helped him along the way, even if they were just the background supporting roles, like the people that helped him. I can't remember when it was, but they wrote the whole speech or whatever, and overnight or something. I can't remember exactly what that was, but they spent all night with him, helping him. So.
You know, that the one that you just mentioned, Shelby, with his wife was so key. That was so key to him and his support. I mean, they mentioned that she's the one that gave him nourishment. But he went 3 days without eating. Ultimately, at the end, and when he flies out of Istanbul, there were a couple of individuals that were mentioned in the book, and some that weren't mentioned, but I think that they also were a supporting role. But one was the gentleman from, well, there was the Johnson gentleman, and he was significant. He's the one, he ends the book with him and says, and he requotes that, "Where have you been?" But Richard drew strength from that woman who had been cut when they were in the room writing their addresses, because her topic was irrelevant. They deemed from that the woman, whatever that woman's group is.
Was she Muslim? Is that what it was?
She was from another country, and I think it was Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's right.
But to see that courage that she had, and wasn't she the one that had the voice that said that the chairman's corrupt? That's pretty bold, and it sounded like it was a crazy experience. The other ones were really just the people with the families international. Those just slow and steady people that are always there, and not to forget the prophet and that the declaration of the family, that the proclamation of the family, which he based his comments on. That's so important. It's kind of, not really mentioned, but it's in, it's in there. We know that was a great support.
Okay. Were there any other insightful lessons that you gained from the book that you want to talk about?
Sarah kind of mentioned both the ones I was talking about. One was the proclamation. I really liked how he was able to use that in his speech without being religious. Like, he took and had a secular view on it and was able to use that because he knew religion wouldn't help him in that situation. Like, flat out religion wouldn't help him in that situation. So I like that. And then she also kind of mentioned the experience he had at the mosque. And I loved that when he went there, he had the feeling that they're all brothers and sisters, and it gave him a new perspective on a whole bunch of his advocacy efforts, like the abortion and the same-sex attraction and marriage. And I thought that was really cool, and a good stance that he had on it.
Right. Yeah, he did. That's you want to finish that book for that last little chapter, Madison. It's so nicely concluded. It's really very spiritual, and he talks about the Turkish rugs and how symbolic those are, and the artwork that has a tree of life and white, beautiful fruit. And, I think that it just spun it all together, is that we really are, sometimes we lose focus, but we really are all brothers and sisters of a loving Heavenly Father. It was just a great reminder.
Okay, thank you for your insights. Okay, that's the end of our discussion. So, anybody take notes?
I took notes.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, let me just get back to the top. Okay, so from the first question, we had talked about how we didn't realize how much the UN documents and policies influenced each country's policies, and we want to understand the influence that it really does have on some of the more smaller countries, I guess you could say. And that overall it was a good review for us to be able to put into perspective what we've been learning. For a second question, we pretty much all felt that it was individual focused and that the people that are advocating for that are very loud and they are corrupt, so they definitely use the influence to their advantage. And yeah, that's pretty much was the basis. And then question number 3, again, the influence, the emphasis on influence, that how the policy is pushed by influence. And then that, let's see, what was the question? So how was your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law? Sarah had mentioned that the importance of collaborating efforts and have a unified vision for the family policy, even though we're on opposite sides of the country, and that's something important to make sure we are collaborating and unified in our efforts. And then Madison mentioned that the government officials need to remember who they're fighting for, and that the laws they pass are serious, and that they should be seriously considering the people back home. And then the next question, Heavenly Father's hand was definitely in a lot of Professor Wilkins' efforts. He, like with his beard, he grew the beard for a play, but he didn't end up being in the play, and instead, because of that, he was taken as like an East Coast professor, which got him to speak. And so just our past experiences that we've had, he creates those for us to have a platform to be more effective and a clear advocate. And then there was the other example of the definition of marriage in 1949 that was in one of the UN documents, and they were able to use that as a precedent for their
To be in the bracket.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so just the timing and everything showed God's hand. Then the next question, there was a lot of people supporting him, and one of the main ones that we liked was the emphasis of his wife and how she gave him the nourishment and support and strength that he needed. And then there was just a lot of people that were supportive, and especially the man that asked him, "Where have you been?" And he influenced Richard a lot. And then other insightful lessons we learned was that we're all brothers and sisters, and the mosque was a big influence on his view of everything, and he was able to relate a lot of the Turkish rugs and the artwork that related to the Tree of Life to our own religion, and he was able to, it just emphasized that we were all brothers and sisters, even if we lose focus of it from time to time. Yeah.
You are a really good note taker, Shelby. Seriously, that's a great talent.
Well, thanks. I typed it this time, it helped.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's what I'll lead next week if you want. I haven't done that in a while.
I'll do the notes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies.
Hey, take care.
Thanks.
Thank
You
you.
as well.
Go get some rest.
Thank you. I'll try. See you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.